to it. So I'm Amy Fung, and today I'm talking to, and please could you introduce yourself?
Yep, Natasha Falconer.
And yeah, we're going to be talking a bit about your art today. I'm really excited. So you were just telling me about your day job. What is that exactly?
Well, at the moment, I'm actually working more like in public health, so it's not related to my PhD anymore because that contract ended during this whole lockdown kind of thing. So I started to do more of my artwork and things while waiting to get a new job, basically, and looking for other things. So now it's kind of like public health kind of stuff. So not art related, but
Because we were talking about that, weren't we? About how, there's the expectations of what you should do for your job. And it sounds like what you do is the ideal thing, but also you do art on the side. So how have you juggled that?
so it's been like before when I was doing my PhD, like I said, I was like studying, and obviously I was doing a PhD in rice, which sounds really stereotypical to a lot of people, I guess, as well. But I chose it because my mom was always like, okay, go into like this, that, next thing, and like, do sciences or something. And I did not want to for ages. So I didn't bother for a long time. I was just kind of doing my own thing, little jobs here and there. And I was like, actually, I do like science. So I was like, I'll go and actually, go back to university, go and try and study this. And then I ended up finding myself in a PhD as well because I was really interested in food security. I thought, well, rice is like one of the most important staple crops, and it's the one that I eat the most anyway. So
That makes sense completely. So how did you get into the art then? How did you start?
So I've always kind of drawn. It's always been a big, big thing. My mum used to say to me as well, she was worried I would choose that as a career because she could see that I was always going for it, and she was very scared and all these things. But I've always kind of done it, and then I've done little like small pop-up exhibitions here and there, sold small bits of work, But now I've started to do a bit more commissions, especially with like lockdown. And I think now with the kind of current climate and stuff as well, I was like, okay, well, not just making kind of art which I think, oh, it just looks quite cool. I was like, I want to do stuff that actually speaks a bit about like the kind of experiences having growing up as well, especially with like all the kind of like racism across like the pandemic and things, as well as like Black Lives Matter and things that really kind of like make you see and think, I should say something. I can't just be quiet about this my whole life and just be like, okay, well, it's rubbish, but I'm not going to say anything. So
No, I can definitely see that coming through in your art. I remember coming across it and getting really struck by, I think, the balance between talking about your own life and your experience with it, plus how it resonates with, I think, a lot of what people experience. So I think I'll jump into the first one, if that's all right. So thank you so much for sending a few through. Please, could you talk us through this one that we're looking at right now?
okay, so this one is actually a bit about my more mixed identity, being half Thai, half Scottish, and the kind of questions, because obviously you get things like, where are you really from or something, but when you're mixed and people sometimes know that you're not maybe entirely like Asian. I mean, most people see me and think Asian straight off, but sometimes you get people who are like, oh, you look mixed or something, but instead of being like, oh, you look mixed or something, it's like, so what are you? And it's just, it sounds ridiculous because it's like, well, I'm not like a robot or an android or something that looks like a person. I am a person, not what are you? It's just such a really strange way of asking that question. And I've had like other mixed people tell me that, they've been asked in that kind of way as well. Like, so what are you? And I think for people who are maybe more racially ambiguous, this is quite a big thing too.
And I can really see that obviously with the art that I'm seeing here. There's that robot, but there's also that anger. It's really coming through. I love it. I really love it. So what do you use when you're drawing?
I usually use Clip Studio Paint. I mean, it's used to be called like Manga Studio, so I've always liked that kind of like style, like cartoony kind of thing and stuff. I mean, I used to use Photoshop, and sometimes I'll do it for more like bending text and a few things that you can't do with Clip Studio Paint. But I just love the brushes and like the way that it just functions. It's so intuitive as well, and just for the style that I do, it just works. I mean, I
And
do traditional stuff too, but I've just got straight into digital after getting a tablet again.
yeah. And did you teach yourself, or did you go to lessons or classes?
So basically, the furthest I went in school in art was up to about, well, fourth year in Scotland. So I don't know what that is in like English terms, basically. So it was about like 14 years old, stopped doing like proper like art because I didn't get on with my teacher for one. So I didn't take it for higher. And at the same time, there was a choice of taking art or higher maths in the same column, and I was forced to take maths. So that kind of narrowed it down and all the other things that I was able to take. So I was like, fine, I'll do maths, which I failed. But I'm not actually that bad, but I just hated it so much. I didn't apply myself, and yeah, just didn't do that. But I've been to like some life drawing classes here and there, but most of the time I've just taught myself from watching like YouTube videos, or always just kept at it and just trying anything I can do.
I'm completely the same. I was terrible at maths, and I felt really pushed to do something maths related or science related. And of course, like you, I do illustration and I do graphic design as my main job, but I like to draw too. So I've always been torn as well. So I completely get where you're coming from. I just jump to the next one. Could you talk us through this one, please?
So this one is kind of based off like, you know, the traditional Thai dancers that you get in the con, which is the Thai traditional dancing kind of thing as well. But I just thought to kind of like do it a bit more modern and some of my own kind of style, because I like the sci-fi kind of elements and stuff. And I think it made me think as well, because, you know, with social distancing and all these kind of things, imagine if like these kind of traditional things got replaced by like, you know, technology, because, you know, we're all working from home, all these kind of things. And I thought maybe a nice way to kind of blend my heritage with like things that are going on at the current like moment in time as well. So I kind of went for that one to just kind of touch on that and show how sometimes I might not do something that's extremely like political, but I might try and like bring my heritage into it some way, or some other things too. Just
So I really love how you do bring your Thai heritage in your everyday life. How much of that heritage plays into it? Like I know we've discussed food before, like you've given me lots of recommendations on Thai food. So I know that's a big thing, but how in other ways does your heritage tie in with your life right now?
so it was weird. I think I got more into exploring it a bit more as I get older and stuff. So when I was young, I was born in Thailand, and basically me and my mum came over and my dad as well, when I was about 3 years old. So I spoke Thai as my first language then, and, you know, was learning to like read and write a bit. But then when I came over here, back about, it's probably about 30 years ago now, it was kind of the thing where my mum was told, don't speak to your child in, you know, Thai, otherwise she's not going to pick up English, she's not going to become like fluent in English, and this is the most important language for you, she's living here and for her education. So my mum stopped talking to me in Thai, except for basic little bits and pieces here and there. I mean, I always had the food. She'd tell me kind of like stories, like kind of like the stories you get like Thai, like folk stories, or like, you know, kind of things related to Buddhism and things too. So I did have that kind of thing growing up, and then, you know, in and out of the Thai community with bits and pieces there. But as I got older, I was like, well, I want to be able to speak my own, like, you know, the language I started speaking as well, and I could understand bits and pieces. So I started watching a lot of Thai dramas actually. Look on, they're so cheesy. They're just basically, they're like telenovelas, but oh, and I'm addicted to them. I think they're great. I still watch them quite a lot. I mean, I watch a lot more like Thai news and things. So now I'm quite conversational. I can read and write a bit as well. So I'm getting there, and I do want to actually, you know, maybe go over sometime for like, you know, a year or two. And that's why I thought, well, doing a PhD and all these other things would help me to get over there. I could always have an opportunity, especially working with rice, to go over there too. But to be able to speak to my family and to write to my family and not have to rely on my mum as a translator, because when I was younger, you could tell when your mum's saying something, I'm misrepresenting you basically, but you couldn't say enough to kind of defend yourself. Whereas now I can joke and defend myself and all sorts of things. So it's fine.
That's really cool. Do you feel like because you're saying that you've learned from watching Thai telenovelas, do you have like a really like exaggerated language that's like really?
Oh my God. Yeah. So when I was speaking to my cousins and my cousins' children on the phone, like earlier on, oh, no, it was last year now. And my sister was over like visiting like family in Thailand with her girlfriend and just going around there. So they decided to phone me up and like talk to me. And my cousin's daughter said I speak like one of the kind of like lead actresses on a Thai like soap opera kind of thing. And I've had another friend say that as well. But then I've got other bits of vocabulary from like watching like Buddhist things. So it's very polar. It's either like this really trashy, extreme like vocabulary, or it's very religious or something. And the kind of normal stuff in between isn't quite there yet sometimes. But no, I think now watching a bit more regular kind of TV shows, not just like the trashy stuff, it's helped a lot. And then speaking to my mum in Thai like all the time now as well. At least then she's now willing to talk to me in Thai because I learned enough of it that she can have a conversation. So I'm getting more of the everyday things now, and I find I'm using it a lot more and more in touch with my culture now from just even having access to the language.
No, that's really cool. So yeah, it's so fascinating how living over here, you sort of, there's maybe nothing that we've been able to draw from to know how to be someone who's born in a different country, but also has their heritage from somewhere else. So it's such a hard one to juggle into it, isn't it? But also great that we can also embrace that, I think. And I really see that in your art. So that's so cool. I'm going to jump to the next one. Oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
Could you talk about this, please?
So this one actually, I mean, I don't want to throw my old employer into this, but I mean, I worked at university. Obviously, after I finished my PhD, you go into research. So I was working at university, and two different women on like, I had like a basically like a really spicy Thai curry my mom had like made for me, and she like, gave me little takeaway boxes of food and stuff. Sometimes when I'm really busy with work, she would just like drop off little things like that as well. And I'm actually vegetarian, so I don't eat fish sauce or like shrimp paste. So the stuff that would stink, and I would understand people complaining about it. That wasn't even in there. It was just aromatic to me anyway. And most people were like, oh, that smells really good. Oh, that's really interesting. But then I had these women, one was just like, oh, it's too stinky to eat that here. Ugh, and looking at me like I was eating dirt, basically. It was just like, the look on her face was just like pure disgust. And then another person, like in the other room and something before was like, oh, that just stinks as well. And, they have people eating bacon rolls and Cullen's skink as well. I mean, that's a fish-based soup. It's not exactly the nicest smelling thing. And I'm not telling folk, don't eat your stovies, don't eat your Cullen's skink, don't eat your bacon rolls. I don't like the smell of it, but I'm not complaining. Don't complain when I bring in my food.
Yeah, and it's just so, I feel like, do you feel like when they said it, they knew the impact of what it was? Like, I do, because sometimes I feel like, how can you say that? Do you not realize it's such an attack on
Yeah,
your...
exactly. Well, I don't think they actually knew. I think these kind of women, they were like the kind of people who wouldn't know and just say something without thinking about it and wouldn't even realize that it came from that kind of place or something. But I spoke with it with another girl, and she's like, a Nigerian girl, and she was like, that's just straight up racist. And I hadn't, sorry, hadn't really thought about it like that. And I was like, you know what, you're right. The way she looked down on it, and I was actually really hurt because this was food my mum had made me. If it was something I'd cooked myself, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess, whatever. But my mum made it because that's the way she shows her love. She's just like that. It's always like food, food, food. And the fact that they kind of said that about something my mum had made, I was so raging that day. I was just like, oh, you absolute Karens.
I know, right? And also I feel like there's an added level of insult now in that, especially nowadays we see Asian food getting really fashionable and people
Oh,
loving the so-called exotic ingredients, and it's being popularized by people who aren't your mother, but probably someone not from Thailand. So how do you feel about that?
oh God, no, there's sometimes I see something and I always complain. This is the straight up thing I always say. When you see like this beige looking Thai green curry being sold in a supermarket, it's like, that looks like a carbonara. That is not a green curry. What is that? I'm just like, no, don't even call it that. That's misrepresentation. And it's like other things. I know people are trying to do fusion food or like do kind of other bits and pieces. Like I saw something else, which was like another like Thai inspired thing, but they didn't say Thai inspired. They just saw like Thai, this and that next thing. I was like, I don't recall we have this in our national dishes or anything. And I just feel like if people were more educated about, our food and things like this as well, and they were like, respected it properly and weren't like, doing things like how there's that whole thing against MSG, which is completely unfounded by science. I mean, we have like glutamate receptors, all these things, and it just comes from a place of like, racism. So when people have that attitude and then use derogatory terms to refer to, say, a Chinese takeaway or like getting a Thai food or something like this, and then now all of a sudden they start to like have their version of like our food without it insulted us for or haven't really respected before, it just that does kind of get to me a bit. I mean, I feel like it's something that, again, it's not something that people talk about a lot because it just seems like, oh well, it's food, it's not really you, but food is such a big part of our culture, and at the same time as well as it being such like an integral part of our culture, we realize how passionate people get about food. Like when it's like, when it comes to, even like things about like veganism and people who are like strict carnivores and stuff, they get into like heated like, debates about it. But imagine when you add a layer of your culture to that as well, not something that you chose because of like, a health thing or other kind of reason, but something you were kind of born into. It's just, I don't know, probably rambled a bit about that, but that's kind of my overview of my feelings about that.
No, I feel like it's so it's just the force of feeling, you know, behind it. It's something which isn't just, it's more than words. It's something that can actually affect people quite deeply. And I have to say, even growing up, I'd be really embarrassed about bringing in my packed lunches, and I'd be asking for really rubbish bland sandwiches because I'd rather have that than being scrutinized by my friends. So yeah, it's so sad. I want to ask, when you draw things like that, like obviously this is going to resonate with a lot of people, I feel, the process of drawing, do you find it quite cathartic? And obviously you're putting it down on paper. How does that process affect you? Do you feel like somehow more relieved?
I do actually. It's something that, you know, it really kind of just like gets out there. Most of the time in my life, I try and look at being like Buddhist because, like, you know, Theravada Buddhism is like the biggest religion in Thailand. I was kind of like raised with that kind of background and stuff. I do meditate and I do, like, you know, mindfulness, you know, daily, and you know that helps keep me calm. But you know, with certain things like this, where it is like kind of like things I feel like, you know, they are unjust and things, I feel like as much as I practice and all these kind of things, I still feel like something that I should get out. And it's not just for the fact that it's annoyed me and it's, you know, hurt me, but I think growing up and not seeing a lot of these kind of things, especially like, you know, how you feel and stuff as well, not represented like in media or art that's so accessible here. I always think, well, if I draw it and I'm moaning about it, maybe someone else feels the same, and it might be like, I don't know, reaffirming to whoever sees it or something, but like, actually, I do feel like that. And oh, actually, it's valid, because there's so much times, especially when you don't have maybe that many friends from your own background or people who've experienced the same things as you and things. And when you say something to someone, people, like, you know, who've not experienced it will downplay it or basically disregard how you feel. And then it's almost like gaslighting, you know, because you start to feel like, is this actually racist, or is this actually a problem, or, you know, all these things. So when you speak to someone else and from your kind of background who's gone through it, it's like, no, I understand. It's rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish. I hate how that felt as well. And you're like, so I'm not crazy. This is actually a thing. So I think by trying to draw stuff like that, it's cathartic for me, like getting that kind of like feeling out. But at the same time, I just hope that someone else sees it and thinks, I'm not crazy for feeling this. This is actually something that other people feel too. And that's kind of like another reason behind it.
No, yeah, completely. When I saw this, I just feel like it really spoke to me. So thank you for drawing this, because I really love how you also brought a bit of Scotland into it as well. Like I was like, what's colour skin good? Thank you for explaining that to me as well. But I love that, because it just shows how, you know, we are all over the UK and we are from different parts of Asia, and there's so many aspects to us. So now, on top of being a great piece of art, I feel like it would talk to a lot of people, I think, having something like this. So I really love this piece. So yeah, could you explain this one to me? Because I think you touched on it briefly, but I'd love to hear the full story.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about this when I was like thinking about some other stuff, and I can't remember what, I was like talking to a friend about something, and this kind of thing came up, and I realized, I was like, I remember how my jaw hit the floor, and how it just completely floored me. It just completely did not expect that. So there were some police officers, and they were going around, I think, just my street, and like they came to my flat building. I guess they must have spoke to other people in the building as well. So there was some motorbike or something that had just been stolen in the area, and they just wanted to see if people had, like, you know, heard anything. And they knocked on my door about, I don't know, around this time, like 8:30 or something. And for me especially, I'm like, who'd come here at this time? I don't invite people around. And this was before lockdown, this was years ago, but I was just more like, okay. So I opened the door with a bit of a puzzled look in my face. I saw the police officer, and without even saying hello or anything like this, the guy on the left, basically, he was just like, so you do speak English, don't you? And I was just like, looked at him, and then whenever someone says something like that, I do go pretty broad, just almost like as a kind of defense mechanism. It's like, I do. And just because it's like, it's your way of kind of like, I belong here, I sound like you, come on now. And luckily the other officer who was with him, she looked at him. Oh, when he said that, as soon as he said that, she looked at him like, you absolute idiot, why did you just say that? And as soon as I said, I did, like, she just took over, she asked everything, and they got out pretty quickly. But I think she must have had words with him. I think the way that she looked, I could tell she had my back on this one without saying anything. It's just one of those moments where, you know, at least someone's, you know, picked up on it. And it wasn't just, but it was just so shocking, because you don't expect that, especially on your doorstep.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it must have been such a relief to have someone there to be like, you know, keep getting your back and being on your side, because usually that's not the case, is it? It's usually maybe they don't speak
Exactly.
up. Yeah. So no, that must be so frustrating. But I actually thought about the style of this, and it reminded me quite a lot of, like, it could be a part of a, you know, really large comic book sort of strip, like a story. Like, what styles influence you, or what artists have ever influenced you?
So I've always like kind of like grew up reading manga and was really into that. And I wasn't so big on like a lot of Western comics because I just didn't like the art style and it wasn't really me. Or I don't know, I've just always been drawn to manga. And I don't know if it's also been the fact that there's one small bit of Asian representation as well that I just like kind of grasped onto as a kid. That's why I love like kind of line works. But I got into more other kind of like independent comics and stuff as I got older, like by Image Comics and stuff. And there's one that's, you know, not in this style but like monstrous, and they're, you know, it's a couple like of like a female illustrator, and like, you know, it's like Sana, and I'm trying to remember the last name of the other one as well, Lou. And yeah, they're Asian American as well, but you know, they're doing a bit more of a kind of Western style with color. And it was like, I like their line work, I like that style. And then there was a comic called Maestros that I just loved the color in. So that kind of style, as well as like obviously loving like platform video games, JRPGs, because it's all again like the crazy colors you get in anime and things too. But I didn't want to just do the like typical anime style. It was like, as much as I enjoy it, I wanted my own kind of thing, which is like, obviously I grew up here as well, so kind of wanted to like, you know, have that kind of like thing to it as well. So I think a lot of the stuff I've drawn when it comes to like more of the stories or the more kind of racial based thing, it's like I had the idea that I would like to get them into a zine at some point and just have like a zine of these kind of things that I could distribute to people, especially people who think like, yeah, they want to feel like represented in something as well, and have a collection of like these little kind of story like clips or something to kind of like, I guess, reaffirm our experiences like as British East and Southeast Asians.
Please make that. I would love that. I just think that would be awesome, because obviously, personally, someone who not only loves your style, but also, like, you're talking about JRPGs and anime and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that would be so awesome, because I love that too. But being able to translate that into our experience and in your style as well. Obviously, I don't, you know, those styles already have been done before, but to have it in your own unique voice would be so awesome. So please make that.
I know, I'm really working it. I think I've got a few bits now, so I'm like, okay, I'll get some more stuff done, and then that should be enough to fill a little zine, and then just see about, yeah, what I can do with that really.
Yeah, because you know what, print, I don't know, like, I feel that the art that I look at is quite a bit online, and there isn't so much print around. So is print something that you do currently?
So I do make prints of some work and stuff as well. So I have some stuff for a pop-up exhibition, and I'm going to be making a few more prints, one of that Thai dancer one as well. So I will be making more prints, but obviously I like stuff to be accessible digitally, and I also like stuff to be accessible in print as well. Because some people like to have that physical kind of thing, and they like to, like, you know, have it like, you know, kind of ready and available. And you know, you can do like online zine publishing as well. So as long as like that message gets out to people who want to see it, then that's great. That's what it's there for, kind of thing too. But no, print is nice, and I do have like a soft spot for that because I do like to see something physically in your space. Sometimes it's nice to have something there, so I like to go in between things.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Oh, cool. This one, please, could you talk to us about it?
So that's another thing. So I know a lot of people, you know, will say like, oh, that's really good English that you speak. No, I've had things like, oh, that's a really good Scottish accent you have, or so impressed by having a Scottish accent. Like, it's just so weird to see my face as someone with like a broad accent, especially. And I guess, you know, I am fairly broad. So for a lot of people, it just takes them aback and things. But it's weird because I've got friends who like say like half French, half Scottish, and no one compliments them on their Scottish accent. No one looks at them and thinks you shouldn't have a Scottish accent. They don't even think, oh, they're not even all Scottish, you know? Whereas with me, this is like visible. So it's like strange to have this accent or something. So I know it comes from a place of they like it and they think it's like cute or whatever, but they don't seem to realize it's a bit condescending, it's a bit othering. It's kind of like, you're just basically telling me I don't belong here and my voice is the only thing that's kind of like, you know, getting that. It's like the same as like, you know, sometimes you go to a shop and things as well. And I think I've used my accent, I guess, as a defense mechanism in so many things, because, you know, when you get those targeted kind of questions, it's like the broader you are, the more people accept you and are less likely to question you, especially in Scotland. People are fairly accepting if you have a broad Scottish accent. So I've kind of had that, and it's kind of, I guess, probably got more pronounced as I got older, having a lot more Scottish friends and things. But it's like I've gone into shops before, and you ever had like cashiers when they see you and they're serving you and they start off speaking very slowly, very clearly, and I'm like, well, I think I know why you're doing this, so I'll just like reply like, aye, it's bra weather we're having or something, and they're just, the look on their face is kind of amusing, but then they talk to you like a person after that.
Yeah, so like obviously, you know, you're talking about people who it feels like they've never encountered someone who's Asian or whatever. Like, are there many Thai people where you live or other Asians? And are you from a part of Scotland that's a town, or is it very populated?
It's a small city, so it's fairly popular, and people tend to know each other. Like, you know, once you know people, you kind of know who everyone is within so like certain circles and stuff. But there is a significant like Thai community. But the thing is as well, like I know quite a lot of like mixed people as well, and you know, mixed Thai folk, but then also other like mixed Asians. I mean, some of the Asian folk I've met have been like through like uni and things, and I think there's only one other girl who I'd say is like British East Asian as well, because everyone else tends to be like, you know, either from Thailand or like, you know, actually from Asia. So it's not the same experience, and they don't have the same kind of thing with like, you know, growing up here and that kind of culture and stuff. So even though there are people around, I guess people encourage, like most people they encounter that are Asian maybe still are foreign rather than a lot of local Asians. Not saying that there aren't any, there are. Like I do know a few, but I guess we're not the most common in this part of the world anyway. So
And how do you feel about that? How do you think that's affected your identity? And do you feel like you want to stay in Scotland? Scotland's your home, or do you feel like a bit torn between places?
So I do feel like Scotland's my home, but I do want to go and spend some time living in Thailand as well. It's not like I want to like abandon that, but I mean, I've grown up here. I've got great friends here. My life is here, kind of thing. So I mean, I could move around the UK, maybe it's here or there, but I do quite like where I am just because of the people that I know and things too. And I still feel being Scottish is definitely a big part of my identity as well as being Thai. So that's like the kind of thing too. And like growing up, I think there's another thing that comes with an extra layer of being like mixed race as well. And I've seen obviously Thai people like growing up, like my mom and her friends and things. So I've seen like, you know, this. And I used to think as a kid, I was like, oh, where are all the adults that look like me? Like, where are all the mixed, like Thai, Scottish people or like, you know, other like mixed race adults? What am I going to grow up to be like? You know, there wasn't like a frame of reference. And I know like in Thailand, if I was living there, they really have a thing for a lot of like, you know, mixed race people in the media to do with like, you know, colorism and things as well. Most of the popular, like, you know, like Thai soap opera stars are mixed race, mixed European, basically. And, you know, if I was over there, like the people would come up to me and try to talk to me over there, compliment me on my pale skin, all these kind of things. And like, oh, you've got big eyes, you've got pale skin, all these kind of things. So I guess, yeah, maybe if I'd grown up over there, it'd be different, but I still don't think that's any better because obviously that's to do with colorism and it's specializing in a kind of way and stuff as well. But I guess at least you felt seen. So it's kind of weird here not feeling seen. But I guess it's, you know, anywhere you go, there's going to have some problems, and it's all kind of based off this kind of like, I don't know, I'll say white supremacy.
Hmm. Yeah, there's sort of one of those things where not only do you have that layer of being Asian, but also that layer of being mixed ethnicity and dealing with that as well, and how to handle it when people come at you with their judgments and othering. And yeah, it must be, I don't know what it's like because I'm not mixed ethnicity, but yeah, it's one of those things, you know, where I love that it's coming out in your art as well, because I feel like, again, it's something I feel that people can see and can say, hey, I can identify with that too. So going forward with your art, like where do you want to take it, do you think? What's in store?
So I will start to do like more like kind of web shop kind of things. And I do want to do like, I know, a lot more prints. I want to do kind of zines, and then I'd want to get into like doing like merchandise and things as well. So like, you know, bags and bits and pieces, but I do want to like take my artwork into like say more advocacy work. So I'd like to get to the position where I'm doing a lot more, you know, art for work as well as for myself. But to be in the position where I'm like, okay, I have this time and I've got this skill and I can do it, and like do it for like, you know, free if it's like a cause that I really want to get behind and stuff, you know, because, you know, obviously for commissions and stuff, of course I need to make money out of things, I need to eat, I need to do these things. But when it comes to work where I feel like I think it's an important message, and I want to share with people who might not have had that representation and stuff. That's the kind of stuff I want to put out there without, like, I guess charging for that, or at least charging just for like materials and not making like a profit out of it. I want it to be accessible to other people who might be struggling with their identity and like other kind of issues, because as much as like, yeah, we're starting to like reach out and see things now. This is quite recent. Like obviously like growing up, we've probably felt a lot more isolated, and it still seems like maybe the progress in the past 10 years has been quite fast, and we're still not quite, at that, level yet. But, we need to keep doing it. We need to keep getting out there, and we need to like keep like sharing with people and like making it sure that people aren't afraid to stand up and to talk to each other and to be there to support others as well. So that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, honestly, I do feel very inspired by that, because I feel like I'm in the same boat where I want to do art and I want to do advocacy, and I'm constantly questioning myself and thinking, should I put this out there? Is this gonna offend people? Will they like it? I don't want to say anything controversial. And then
Yeah.
when I see stuff that you do, I'm like, you know what? I should put it out there, because so many people feel the same way and want to say something and do something. So, and also I feel like the way that you've done it is so impactful. And when I see it, not only does it look really great, but I'm like, yeah, it has a message and it seems to mean so much more. So I really love that you're bringing something that's actually quite socially important into your work as well. So do you feel like, in terms of the subject matter of identity, are there other areas that you want to explore as well in your art? Do you feel like there's still quite a few fields that maybe you want to think about or do?
I think maybe like to kind of branch out into bits and pieces as well. I mean, I've always been obviously like interested in like feminism and stuff, and there's always like intersectionality of things to do with feminism as well, with like, again, Asian women being fetishized, Asian men being, looked down on or like effeminized and things as well, and these kind of things too. But then also the role of like gender in our lives and stuff as well. And I think, certain things might be like, okay, culturally this is like, okay, and like people behave in a certain way, and it's like the whole code switching thing and how gender kind of plays into it. Because I will act a lot more respectful if I was in Thailand with like my family. I wouldn't be like, as open. I'd be more like, I guess slightly more like feminine, I guess, because that's the norm over there on how a woman's supposed to act. Not saying that everyone does, but there's that expectation, and people, you tell your friends here and stuff as well, and they'll be like, oh, that's so backwards, or you shouldn't have to be like that. And I'm like, it's not, it's just, it's a different culture. You don't call something backwards. This is the thing that really, annoys me, is when as soon as someone doesn't agree with something and it's a cultural thing, calling it backwards, it just, I just think that's really insensitive, and it's not a good way to kind of like engage in like discourse about it. But I think as well, I think in this sphere and like having to learn to stand up and say things and making space for ourselves as women, I think it's an extra layer of making it more difficult, because as well as you might not want to rock the boat. Like I grew up not wanting to rock the boat. You just don't want to do anything that's going to get you too noticed or anything that's going to get you in trouble. You just want to be quiet and get your head down and get on with things and stuff. And I think maybe that could come from my upbringing as well. But I think at the same time, the pressure that's put on for women specifically to be like that as well, in comparison to men, where it's just like, it's something I do want to address a bit more in the future and stuff, and just like thinking of ideas of how this has kind of like impacted our lives on like, the kind of intersectional and just the straight up things that have happened that have just been like, no, no.
Gotta draw it. It shouldn't have happened, so I gotta draw it and let people know that's not okay.
Basically, I mean, I've noticed that when I do stuff, I do like, come out and I say stuff, but I guess I do go through a lot period before that, being like, is this super offensive, or have I toned this down, or is it this kind of way and stuff? I want to make sure the message gets out there, but at the same time, you don't want to straight away like alienate people. And I think if you do something that's super offensive straight away, as much as it might, resonate with some people, that anger, that rage is great. Sorry. But like sometimes like, if it's too offensive, people don't want to listen, they shut down, and then they start going against the message. So I think there's a fine line and there's a balance. You want it to resonate with people, you want it to be strong, but at the same time, you don't want it to get you all that kind of like horrible kind of response back where people are just not understanding or not even wanting to understand at that point. They just shut it down before even opening up the discussion. So I think there's a lot of that thought process that has to go into things first.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And even when I come across stuff like that, like things that I've encountered where I think that's so completely wrong, it really depends on what I feel like that day. Sometimes I'm in a really great mood and I'm really patient, and other days I'm just like, I'm just gonna go in because I don't have the patience.
I know, it's like when you're over it and you're like, I am so done with this right now. It's like, I couldn't believe people behave like this or still think like this. What year is this now? I mean,
Yeah, especially with someone saying to you, "Oh, do you speak English?" I'm like, come on, like, surely you're not still asking that question.
I
So
know, it's like it's my native language or something, you know. It's like people don't seem to realize that you can have, like, you know, that's your native language, or people can have two native languages or something. I mean, I'm not lucky enough to be like classed as like properly bilingual, you know, but at the same time, people who are bilingual, because I do know people who are raised with both languages and stuff as well, and it's like people can't, like, I don't know, don't seem to realize they have two native languages. It's not like, no, English is their second language. It's like, no, they're both, they learned it at that age where they've acquired both languages. It's, you know, and they just don't get it. And I think maybe if you just, like, you know, grew up with one language and it's the dominant language and everyone that looks like you speaks that language or something, maybe you can't relate to it in this kind of way. But it just feels like there's enough like media and education around there, should be now anyways. Like, do you even speak to anyone outside of, you know, your little kind of sphere? Or have you ever, you know, the world is big. You
yeah.
just, yeah, confusing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what you said about also code switching reminded me of this video that I saw recently of someone saying, you know, the ability of people who are born in a different country from where they might be expected, like people from a diaspora, they tend to have a level of empathy that allows them to be able to code switch. Because I can certainly speak for myself. I automatically have to read a room in order to know what kind of language to use and how to act. And then when I'm at home with my family, like, it's completely different. Like,
Oh,
I'm really loud and brash, but when I'm not with my family, I'm really like nice. So it's a funny one. I don't know if you have the same as well.
oh, sometimes, like, sometimes when I go to like a Thai temple or something, I'm like, perfect, nice little Thai girl kind of thing, well behaved. I was like, yes, studied very hard, all these kind of things, interested in like Buddhism. So it's like, oh, lovely. But then when I'm with my friends, it's totally different. And even with my mum, because my mum nowadays as well, as much as like she was very Thai growing up, the way she has been in the past 10 years, she's kind of softened in a way with certain things. Sometimes I joke about it. I was like, where was this when I was growing up? Why did I have to be the weird one? You know, all my friends with such a strict mum have to do French classes in my lunch break and things, all this kind of, you know, stuff, having an early curfew compared to everyone else, all these things. Whereas now she's a lot more, I don't know, outspoken about certain things and more forgiving. I mean, she's more, you know, accepting of me doing art now. I think now that I've got my PhD, I guess for her, that's fine, you know, but she is more accepting of me doing art and like encourages me to draw more now rather than before where she didn't really mention that kind of thing or didn't encourage that. And I guess now with like the way the political system, like, situation is in Thailand particularly, I think it's helped make my mum more outspoken. She's always been quite interested in current events, you know, things going on here as well. She reads, like, you know, the newspaper and politics here. But with what's going on in Thailand especially, like, my mum is quite outspoken and isn't that kind of person that you think, oh, quiet, that generation won't say something. We're quite similar. So
That's so cool. I think that's awesome because I feel like even the whole thing, I think, about Asian mothers and how they are a certain way, they even have their own kind of expectation on them. So it's really great to hear that your mum is, you know, supportive of you, of your art, and is outspoken about things. Because, you know, I feel like generally people say, oh yeah, your Asian mother wants you to be accountant, lawyer, doctor. And I have to say that is true of my parents. I
yeah,
feel
it was true for my mum too, but she's just changed in the past like 10 years. I don't know what's happened.
Yeah, yeah. And how have you shown her your art and what's her reaction been to it?
So she's seen some of it and things as well. So she does like that and she likes the fact it's outspoken, but she's more of the kind of person who's still just like anything that I did, or she more likes things, I guess, that are more lighthearted that she can just like laugh at and be a bit silly with, but she does like everything and she thinks it's like nice anyway. I don't think she has too much feelings on that kind of thing, because even though like she understands that, you know, she's experienced racism herself, she's not had to grow up with it in the same kind of way. So sometimes when we do have discussions about it, she doesn't even always quite, you know, make the mark, and I'm like, no, that's not how it is, this is how it is and stuff. And, you know, having to address her own prejudices as well, like before and stuff too, that she had her own prejudice maybe about people who are like darker skinned before. And, you know, I was told her, like, you know, this is wrong. This isn't, you know, people don't, you know, see us as better than them. We're not like, you know, closer to white and, you know, better than them kind of thing. They're being oppressed in the same kind of way, or they're being oppressed in a, you know, different way, but they're still being oppressed by, you know, the same people. So trying to, like, you know, have discussions about that with her. And she does, you know, understand once I actually say my point, and she does start to, like, kind of like agree with what I'm saying. So that's quite a good thing. That she's very open-minded, and she's not someone who's stuck in her way. She's someone that, if you can argue with her very logically, very rationally, and explain something to her, and she thinks it makes sense, she'll be like, okay, well, I support that. She's not, like, you know, going to be like, that's wrong, you're wrong because of this and has to be right. She's very much a person that's very much like, okay, you've made very good points, I can see where you're coming from, I believe this. Or if she doesn't agree, she'll say why she doesn't agree. But I can bring her around to my point for almost everything nowadays. We are very similar, so I know how to explain things to her. So
That's really awesome. I love that. That's really cool. Well, no, that's brilliant to have her supportive of your career and your choices and be able to talk with her on that level as well. So no, that's really brilliant. I think that is the last of our images. And yeah, so thank you so much, Natasha. That was really great. And yeah, looking forward to seeing more of your work.
well, and it was great. Like, thanks for, like, you know, having me to speak about things as well, and actually, like, hopefully it'll, like, resonate with more people and things in the future. And if you want me to get involved with anything at all, I'm more than willing to, like, contribute artwork or do something. So just keep in touch with that, and I'm sure we'll keep chatting for, you know, the future anyway.
No, definitely, definitely. I'm so thankful for you coming on.